Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new season of the Youth Have a Voice
Mm.
podcast, season two. Welcome to a brand new episode. My name is Feolami Awe-Joseph. I am your host for today, and I am really excited to be here with you all today. I'm joined with Azzan Ondolo, who is from Tanzania, and I'm going to be reading out his bio. Azzan is a Tanzanian youth leader and advocate passionate about creating access to opportunities and meaningful education for young people. He currently serves as the marketing and project coordinator at Mwanga Kesho Initiative, where he has led impactful programs such as Kutana na Kesho Yako and Mwanga Bazaar, connecting over 500 youth with mentorship, career pathways, and entrepreneurial opportunities. Zen has played a key role in securing sponsorships and grants to sustain youth-focused programs and has also contributed to major campaigns, including the Silent Walkathon for earthquake survivors in Turkey, the Uhuru Walkathon, and the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, collectively raising over $5,000 for social and humanitarian causes. His work and leadership have earned him representation on international platforms like the World Bank End Poverty Campaign and the Femnet Beijing 30 Plus consultation. Zen is currently pursuing a diploma in accountancy at Tanzania Institute of Accountancy and is building Kaka Home, a digital platform designed to connect African youth and the diaspora with scholarships, fellowships, and career opportunities. He is also a Yali RLC East Africa Fellow, Michigan Fellow Initiative Fellow, and UPG Sustainability Fellow, passionate about leveraging finance, leadership, and youth empowerment to expand access to education, mentorship, and global opportunities for African youth. Thank you, Azzan, for joining me today. How are you doing? I think you're muted.
Yeah, thank you for the lovely introduction. And yeah, it's been a quite beautiful morning per se. Yeah.
I know you're so young, and I think it's just really interesting and so cool that you're doing so many amazing things. I mean, we found each other from the youth group channel where you basically were one of the speakers for International Youth Day at my organization. And I would love to know more about your background and what kind of inspired you to begin working in youth empowerment.
Sure, no worries. Okay, as my name is Azzan Mustafa again. Okay, so whenever I decided myself to involve myself in the space, first of all, I could never imagine myself being involved in this community and space of youth empowerment and advocacy because of how the industry in per se in our country isn't that quite known. So I even remember when sometimes I'm meeting up with people, when I tell them that I do youth advocacy or I do youth empowerment, they ask me like, what is that? Like, what do you do exactly? What is that? So in this industry and this space whereby you're trying to bring development and empowerment and ensuring that youth are being included in different decision-making spaces or policy-making spaces, it's quite rare to find the right people or the right age gap that involve themselves in these spaces. So whenever I started volunteering in different opportunities, just mentioned the one in Turkey, I did like that was almost like 2 years back, if I'm not mistaken. And then I used to do also walkathon volunteering. So it was like the people that you meet up with and also the networks that you build doing those sessions or doing something very important in the communities are those places whereby you meet the same people with the same age gap and the same experiences as you. So per se, I was also interested in this space because like the amount of privileges youth are being involved in actually taking action. Like I remember when we're given like this opportunity to find sponsorship or grants on how they could support us in this volunteering work that we're doing. It was like something new to me. Like I can't imagine an adult tell me to do that. I believe I was almost 18 during that time. So like given this privilege to do something like this was very quite hectic and stressful, but I was actually proud that we were able to secure almost like 5,000 USD, if I'm not mistaken, for the silent walkathon. So those moments that you see yourself achieving something, of course, you had the support, you had the networks, but also at the end of the day, it's also the initiative of doing something like this. It's very quite impactful at the end of the day. And even the people that you meet and the people that you're able to connect with emotionally really is like very profound and impactful at the end of the day, and also the spaces that you build in future times that you might need them or any support that they might be able to help you with. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Azan. I think I could really relate to what you mentioned when you spoke about starting off really early, because I too started off early at 16. I mean, when I started building my organization, I also wanted to volunteer just so I could make sure I was on the right track. So as like you, I was 16, 17, being told to interview people for grants, and I was wondering that what do I know about interviewing for grants? Well, I do think that starting off youth early is also really important, as you've mentioned, and I think the earlier that young people start, the better it is for all of them. And that leads me to my next question. Growing up in Tanzania, what were one of the biggest challenges you noticed young people facing when it comes to accessing opportunities for youth?
Okay. So as I mentioned before, one of the biggest challenges is the lack of exposure and access to information. So a little about me: when I did not continue pursuing my A levels, I finished my O levels. And then when we were done with O levels, we were given like this 6 months break. Those 6 months break, I started working. The first job that I ever done, I was like a waiter. So I did that for almost like 3 months. And after that, I started doing much more volunteering work because I don't know, I felt like quite inspired with how people engage themselves in those areas. So in spaces like those, you learn a lot and you never expected to attain information compared to school and all of that. One of my reasons, even I didn't continue pursuing A levels, because at the same time, I grew up in a low income family back. I always had my mom to be there supporting. So when I started working, I was supposed to be able to also help out most of the times. So in spaces like this, whereby you engage yourself at the same time, you come from not a dependent family, you start learning how to become independent and find something for yourself. At the end of the day, it's also the exposure that you get and the different people that you meet. And also it's whether through how you volunteer, how you work with people like this. There's always, you're always going to learn something from each person at the end of the day. At the end of the day, it's also, as I said before, there isn't enough information in spaces like this. Like if I told a person that I'm a Yali alumni, I became a Yali alumni at 18. Like when I tell I was almost the youngest person in that room, I remember even one of the attendees that attend the event, he was almost like 24, 25. And one of the questions he asked me was like, why are you doing here? Like, why are you 18? You're supposed to be enjoying life. You're supposed to be enjoying your summer break and all of that. So at the end of the day, I'm very quite privileged that I had this opportunity to engage myself in spaces like those. But I feel like there's supposed to be more information and more platforms like this that are able for youth to be engaged themselves in, engage themselves in mostly. So yeah. And also it's also the mindset. Like you're always gonna feel doubt. Like you're always gonna be doubtful about yourself. You're always not gonna be perfect at certain situations. Might face certain problems at the end of the day, but also how you're able to connect, how you're able to build a relationship with people, especially in areas like mentorship and being aware and spaces like this. It really matters a lot. So how you're also able to engage yourself and meet up with different people, not because you just want something from them, but also you're able to learn, and they're willingly to do that and support you in that. So yeah.
I could really relate to what you mentioned about sometimes being the youngest person in the room. I recently did a course in Nigeria in at Lagos Business School, and I was 19 at the time when I did the course earlier this year. And I just remember people wondering, what are you doing here? Because everyone was like in their late 20s or even at the early 30s, mid 30s. So I was like the youngest to graduate from the course, and I was also the youngest to get the best project in the entire course with my group. So I just think that
Wow.
exposure, yes, exposure, as you mentioned, is important for young people. And that just kind of leads me to my next question. What do you think could make young people more exposed, or what tools and mediums do you think young people need to be exposed to better get exposure on youth participation and things to actually help them develop as young people?
Okay. So I used to have a tendency back then when I was in high school. I used to have a tendency of not engaging myself in spaces like this. For example, we might have like a certain professional coming for a career fair or maybe coming to speak to us. Most of us, were like not interested in staying for an hour listening to this old guy or this adult speak about something. So I remember when I was done with high school, I started volunteering and then meeting up with people. And despite the age gap, there's certain things that you can really relate to them at the end of the day. Because you gotta understand that they're also kids, they're also like students back then. they weren't adults in all of their life generation. Okay, some people might appear like very strict with you, but some people might appear very friendly, and you can even relate to some hobbies you have similar to them. So in spaces like this, I was grateful that a friend of mine introduced me to LinkedIn and spaces whereby youth and professionals are engage themselves in different opportunities. But when I started prioritizing LinkedIn per se, and also in these other spaces, I quite learned a lot. I could not have, like, if it wasn't for LinkedIn, I would not known about reality because I applied through LinkedIn for that. If it wasn't for certain spaces, of course, I've met people who share opportunities and this and that. But it also matters to engage in platforms like this, because at the end of the day, that's how you build your business acumen or professional acumen per se. So how you're able to engage in professional platforms also matter. Of course, nowadays, compared to back then, Instagram nowadays has become something similar to that, being a professional acumen or platform for youth to engage themselves. But also really good to be engaged in spaces whereby they want, whereby they usually are active in professional platforms like LinkedIn, maybe Indeed, and also this other social media platform that they are right now. So that's actually, that really matters at the end of the day, because you're trying to learn from them and also how to associate yourself in spaces like those. So yeah, we should engage yourself in that. Yeah.
Thank you. I completely agree. There needs to be more spaces for youth to engage themselves. And I
Yeah.
understand that you're building a platform called Kaka Hub, and that kind of has to do with career development for young people. Would you like to share more about what Kaka Hub is about and why you decided to start this project, or what stage you are currently in the project?
Okay. So first of all, it's a project I'm working with a fellow of mine. He's a African Leadership University student. When I actually met him during the UPG Stability session, we had like this virtual workshop, if I'm mistaken. So I came from a space whereby I was able to engage myself in opportunities like this, and not a lot of people have those kind of privileges. And when I tell you, I might not be the perfect person for this opportunity or the perfect person fit for this, but I've met people and students of youngsters who are very much more experienced and very much more interested in spaces like this. But at the end of the day, as I said before, lack of exposure and information spaces like this. When I tell you I started volunteering, I never expected, like, the problems that I faced. Sometimes I didn't have like pocket money to travel from one place to another. But I know at the end of the day, I'll find a certain money or something fee to attend this event, because at the end of the day, I know I'm going to learn something. And not a lot of people have that privilege, because sometimes some of us have to start working early. Some of us have to help family with household chores and activities. So I feel like nowadays, in a space whereby we're utilizing digital platforms, it's also really good to engage yourself in opportunities that are there and rare to find them. When I'm currently right now helping a fellow of mine and I create this digital platform, Kaka Hub, we want to connect a lot of youth to different opportunity, mentorship, and resources in one space, and also create something that is personally wished I existed when I was young. Of course, I started early, but I wish I knew this before, so I've known that if I take this stage, I'll be able to develop myself in other stage, and this and this and this and so that and so that. Even to go, forget about even volunteering, and also to grow academically and professionally and personally, because you'll learn a lot besides the space that you engage yourself with, but you also learn how to explore different industries and different careers, especially how young we are. We're still trying to navigate what we're capable of and what we want to do with our lives. So that actually matters at the end of the day. Yeah.
I completely agree. Even when I
Yeah.
started apart from this podcast, I also run a nonprofit, as you're already aware about. It was mainly
Yeah.
because I realized that there was a problem that needed to be solved, that my classmates also saw as a problem. And I thought that what better way than to give back to other people, because it's definitely a problem that will
Yeah.
keep on happening year in, year out. So I really do think it's always important and necessary when other young people are also creating platforms to help their communities and just make sure that people in their communities have access to opportunities that they wish they had when they were that certain age. And then I have another question to ask, because it's kind of involves both participation and youth fatigue. And I use the word youth fatigue because if you know, in Gen Z sometimes, or in our youth generation, sometimes even if there are certain people who would want to do certain things, they just feel that they don't have the willpower to be able to do them. So even if they're exposed to the opportunity, they're like, what's the point? Because they just think that maybe there's too much burden on themselves or there's just too many things to do at the same time. So I know that you're currently balancing being in school with all your volunteering programs. So how do you personally make sure that you stay focused and you kind of balance everything you currently work on? And then what tips would you be giving to other young people who would actually want to be in a similar pathway, but they just don't understand how to go about and navigate doing so many things at the same time?
Okay. So let me tell you something. I have the most unbalanced life and schedule every day. Let me just tell you that. But I'm really grateful because at the end of the day, as I said before, this digital apps that we have nowadays, I usually recommend using a Google Calendar. I usually use it. Right now, I even just set up a meeting with you. I know I have another meeting that I'll totally forget later on, but I have a Google Calendar to remind me. But also at the end of the day, it's about discipline and purpose. You need to understand that, hey, I'm going to build I'm having a vision for myself. 5 years from now, I like to see myself reach somewhere or be somebody one day. And okay, we don't always gotta figure that out. By the end of the day, it's also like the process and the stages how you see yourself grow. So nowadays, I said this thing whereby I started like journalizing per se, not journalizing per se, but also to determine how I've grown and how I've progressed from 6 months from now or few months back before, like mental ways, physically, health, and educational, and also other activities I involve myself with. Because I know at the end of the day, I'm able to grow as a person, as an individual, not only in like spaces like this, but also individually, the relationships I build with people, and also the time and dedication I take myself. So it's always about discipline and having a purpose, why I'm doing this, why I started this, and what will I able to achieve from this. Yeah, because at the end of the day, if something's meant to be, it'll always be yours. So explore a different path and let's see with God's plan and also your own dedication, how's that going to turn out? Yeah.
Completely agree, completely agree. I do think that being able to have a sort of planner, no matter how hectic your life could be, is really, really important. And
Definitely.
I think it's necessary
Definitely.
because sometimes you just find yourself doing so many things and you're like, where's the next step to go? Where do I go to from here? So yes, I completely agree with that. And now my next
Yeah.
question kind of deals with having access to global opportunities. I mean, you've had the opportunity to be in certain global spaces like the World Bank and Femnet and UPG. Why do you think that global collaboration and leadership is important for youth from the global south and just youth in general?
Okay. Experience like this taught me that leadership has no borders. As I said, we have spaces and communities whereby we can involve ourselves in digital engagement and digital platforms. So whether you're in Dar es Salaam or whether you're in, if I'm not mistaken, you're from Nigeria, right? Yeah. So
Yes.
it's also how you're able to engage yourself in spaces like this through social media platforms and all of that. But also you learn a lot from global collaboration. I feel like at the end of the day, I come from a space, of course, I live in the city, but I'm not always exposed to everything at the end of the day. Sometimes there might be something going on around the world, but I don't know what's going on or what's happening. I'm not being informed. So when you get this opportunity to collaborate globally with other people, you learn from each other, you remind us of what's happening in the world, and also youth voices are really powerful nowadays. I remember I was speaking to a person yesterday. She was telling me about how youth are advocating about the problems happening in the world, from Palestine, from the RC, from different problems that are happening right now. And it's really quite impactful because when you tell our parents, like, if they knew what we are doing right now, they could never imagine it happening like 20 or 15 years back because they didn't have opportunities like those. So how we engage ourselves and how we're given this freedom of speech and freedom of expression to express ourselves really matters. And leaders nowadays who aspire youth to be involved themselves in opportunities like this I actually want to see that impact. I actually want to see more youth engage themselves and be informed in spaces like those. So you learn a lot from opportunities like this, and they're willingly to mentor you and also be willingly to support you in opportunities like this. So engage yourself in as many things as possible at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. Engagement is important, and then also exposure is really important, which is why I do believe that social media is one of the greatest tools that young people have. And I also think that being able to use social media in the right way, because I mean there are different sides of social media based on the algorithm. And I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add to this line of thoughts, because I just know that so many people on different sides of social media. But I mean social media can actually be a positive tool for good. And I don't know if you'd like to add on to that, or if there have been any ways that social media has been able to help you as a young person yourself.
Okay. Sure. Can you hear me? Okay, in spaces like this, whereby we're being exposed to different things, and sometimes, okay, I wouldn't say I faced with too many mental health issues per se, but in spaces like this, whereby people get anxious in posting about different opportunities or posting about themselves, or feel anxiety in different situations. I mean, yes, I would say sometimes digital media isn't always the right thing to be involved yourself fully, but it's also how you're able to adapt and be resilient in spaces like this. Sometimes we might see something online whereby you're like, wow, I'm frightened. I'm not sure if I can deal with that. Why is this person bullying me in social media? Why is this and this and stuff? But at the end of the day, it's also your mental well-being and how you're able to deal with problems like that. Of course, it's going to take time. You're not always going to figure it out at the end of the day. You're always going to be anxious. You're always going to be feeling stressed out about platforms like this. But it's also how you're able to engage and also find the right community space. Sometimes you might figure out, hey, I have a bunch of friends who are in this platform, but I'm not very supportive in that platform. But you might find people who are very engaging in a safer or better community space and want you to be a voice to them. So it's also how you're able to balance all, but at the end of the day, also finding the right community at the end of the day. So yeah, there's always going to be something bad or something that you dislike in social media. It's just how you're able to take care of yourself and deal with that. And don't always stay 24 hours or 7 hours a day scrolling Instagram and TikTok. Sometimes that's nowadays I understand why parents tell us that, yeah, digital that the phone is doing something to you. I really get that nowadays. So it's also how you can take a break, read a book, go for a walk, or just meet up with your friends without always having your phone around you. It's really quite good for your mental well-being and health at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that nowadays we've also become a bit too dependent on social media. Mean,
Yeah.
I think I made a comment on a TikTok post recently. I saw a post about how back in the days, social media was just something you go to and then do in your real life. But like now, people leave social media to kind of go into the real life. I remember there used to be this same one, maybe like 5, 10 years ago, BRB, maybe probably more than 5 years ago, be right back. But like nobody uses that anymore because social media is where people live nowadays. So if you are leaving social media, it's because you mentally want to detox. And I just think that there just kind of needs to be a balance, because I know that the world is getting more developed into technology and AI and social media, but then at the same time, balance is also important just so that people's mental health too can also be managed properly, which I completely agree with. And I think you mentioned something about community, and that leads me to your projects working with Mwanga Wakesho. Could you kind of let us know, how did you get involved in that? What's your role? How do you work in that and mobilize community when it comes to that?
Sure, sure. So, wow, like it was so bizarre and rare. I never imagined myself to build something that impactful with one guy Kesho. I remember, I remember when I attended. So one of the things that I told you, it's about attending events and attending in spaces like this. I remember a friend of mine introduced me to them doing an event. It was like a book launch of a famous author in our country, if I'm not mistaken. So I thought I was supposed to just be volunteer and help them out and also like try to find out what's going to happen. But later on, with months going on, the progress I was trying to do, even visiting schools to ask for the students to come attend our events and all of that, it was quite stressful. at the end of the day, I remember the first event we ever hosted wasn't quite successful per se, but having those 40 students in this, I would say, tidy space classroom and them having to engage with us and talk to us and also having mentors approach them, it was one of those moments where I say, it didn't turn out the way you wanted, but you're actually proud of yourself and all that, even if the sponsors didn't quite support you that well. So later on, we progressed and I became the project coordinator and started engaging myself in spaces like this and the people that I meet around spaces like this. It's really quite rare and impactful at the end of the day. You learn a lot from people like this. And this is why I always tell myself, engage in anything as possible. Don't always diverse yourself in one skill, diverse yourself in many skills, because you'll never know what that type of skill will be able to make a difference for you in your future career path or currently in your daily life. So it always matter at the end of the day. So I'm really grateful for the amount of things that we're able to achieve right now. And I can't wait to see how we're able to do more in the near time future and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree when you say diversifying is so important in this day and age because I do believe that if people stick themselves in one box, then they're limiting their abilities.
Yeah.
So I think that when young people make sure that they are exploring as many things as possible, they're keeping their options open and just making sure that they have different opportunities. So if plan A doesn't work out, I can move to plan B. If plan B doesn't work out, then move to plan C and more and more and more. And now that leads me, we're getting to the end of this episode. What's your biggest dream for the African youth in the next 5 to 10 years? What would you hope to see in terms of African youth development?
Okay. From what's happening currently in the world right now, I sometimes wonder we might be involved ourselves in engagement and youth inclusion, but there's still a really wide gap that we're supposed to reach, especially as African youth, compared to the Western youth or Western countries, how they're given platforms and spaces to involve themselves in decision making. It's quite rare and impressive per se. And nowadays, of course, I've seen a fellow of mine attending international events, speaking about different problems and stuff. But it's also, of course, one person can make a lot of difference at the end of the day, but it's also how many of us can also choose to make change in our own community, our own country, and represent ourselves in the near time future. So in 5 to 10 years right now, I really like to see young youth uh, being included in many spaces as much as possible, but at the same time also being empowered and also building something for themselves, not something that we adopt from a Western country or certain platform that we adopt from Western country. Build our own community and ensure that our data and our history and culture will always be preserved from 10 years from or 5 years later on, because nowadays we're very influenced in Western culture and Western perspective. So I like to see how we build spaces like those whereby if I can go to US, I find like a Tanzanian community there or Tanzanian engagement there, and not always maybe Kenyans per se and stuff. So being involved in many industries as possible as much, and also the impact I could make for our own community and also internationally. So yeah.
Mm, Thank you very much for sharing, Azzan. And lastly, for any young person who is listening and they feel they don't have access to visibility, what advice would you give them to start creating opportunities for themselves as well as other people?
Sure. Okay. Start small, like literally start small. You don't have to always figure everything out at the end of the day. You nowadays, as I said, we have our phones, you have our voice and engagement in different spaces like this. So it's actually the right time to be starting right now. I've seen different opportunities that sometimes I wish to apply, and I was like, wow, why did I miss that? Or why did I not engage myself in this? And at the end of the day, it's also what's meant for you, or simply come back to you at the end of the day, but also starting as much as possible right now and starting small as you can. Volunteer for community work, maybe raise a fund for a certain campaign, or maybe just do a charity event. You also meet up with people like those who are very doing something very engageful in the end of the day. So, those places whereby you learn, you connect, and also grow as a person really matters. So also be curious, consistent. Is always in the space like this can sometimes be exhausting, but it's also encouraging that you meet up with people like this, and how you're able to involve yourself in spaces like this really matters. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Azan. And do you have any final words of advice for anyone who is listening? And also, what next could we expect from you and your projects?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I'm really sorry.
Correct. So, do you have any final words for anyone who is listening? And then what could we expect next from you as well as the projects you're developing?
Okay, sure, no worries. Okay, what should I say? Okay, at the end of the day, I know I'm always repeating my same words at the end of the day, but always engage yourself in many things as possible, because at the end of the day, we're still figuring out what we want to do with our lives. I'm always, even sometimes I'm figuring out what I want to do with my life at the end of the day. So engage yourself and immerse yourself in different spaces and opportunities, because you don't know what that one person can actually make a difference for you. I'm just meeting Feolami. I believe you're also in the NGFP group, if I'm not mistaken. Next
Oh,
Generation Future
no.
Foresight. You're not
No,
okay.
that's not
I
me.
remember
Yes.
that's not okay. I remember okay. For some reason, I remember somebody sharing an opportunity with me before I engaged myself in one of the seminars we had before, and randomly, just a person reaching out to you, and you just text them like, "I would like to be part of this session and stuff," and you being part of the panelists and all of that. So in spaces like this, it really matters how you build your portfolio and how you engage yourself in rooms like this. So yeah, immerse yourself in many things as possible, and always keep a record for what you're doing. And also don't forget to follow Feolomi's YouTube and podcast. Please do that. And
Thank you.
yeah, I'll be launching Kaka Hub, if I'm not mistaken, on December or next year. So I would really also appreciate you guys to be engaged in my Instagram page if I'll be launching it soon. And let's see the difference that we can make for our community. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. We'll be waiting for the launch, and then I'm sure as soon as that is done, we'll also be posting on our podcast so that people can also follow your pages, but we'll also be linking all your social pages so that people can follow you and know what's next with all the activities that you're working on. On that note, I'd like to thank you so much, Azan, for joining me today. I know you have such a busy schedule for today, but I really appreciate you taking out the time of your day to come for this podcast recording. Please make sure you follow Azzan on all social media platforms. His social media handles will be linked down below. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and also like our podcast. So like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you in our next episode. Goodbye.
Appreciate it.